You can call me Jason. And before you ask, no, my career did not start with killing monsters. Well, not the ones you read about on message boards and in novels. For obvious security reasons, I won't go into detail about what branch I work for or use the real names of the people involved in this incident. The call came in after 2200 hours. A catastrophic event occurred, killing and injuring multiple people. My team, Alpha, along with 2 others, Bravo and Charlie, were part of a QRF, Quick Reaction Force, tasked with rescuing a group of individuals from a remote research facility in the mountains of Colorado. My CO, Blackburn, kept an eye on us through the infrared camera of a Predator drone that was watching over the operation as things unfolded. Our advisor, a suit who I'll call Chuck, was pulling the strings on this op. We were pulled aside by a woman being escorted by heavily armed guards dressed in civilian clothing before we boarded the waiting little bird. "Are you in charge of the Alpha team?" She pointed at me with a cell phone in hand. "Yes, ma'am," I answered quickly. "This is your new mission." She handed me a picture of an older-looking man in a lab coat. I handed the picture to the rest of my guys. "What's his name?" I asked quickly, trying to get out of there. "Dr. Klein. Make sure he gets out alive. I'll be in touch." She disappeared into the growing crowd of support personnel that were walking outside as the helicopters spooled up. We were in the air in a matter of seconds. I flipped down my knots, night vision, testing to see if they were still operational. I didn't switch out the battery pack before the alarm went off and was worried that the remaining battery life wouldn't last that long. A bright green glow emitted from the 2 tubes, causing me to squint momentarily. I looked over at Power, my machine gunner, who gave me a thumbs up. The thermal ID patch on his arm that identified him as a friendly glowed brightly. I was satisfied with the results and flipped them back up quickly shutting them off to save what battery life was left. On the right side of the bird sat Clay, my designated marksman, and Simmons, the team corpsman. The sky was clear, and the stars were shining bright, giving us perfect visibility of the surrounding area. It was almost beautiful, despite the situation. I did one more quick look over of my rifle and equipment, making sure everything was in working order and where they needed to be. As the helicopter sped over the rocky terrain towards the facility, I was about to speak to the pilot when a voice came over the emergency frequency that Command and the other QRF teams were monitoring.
"This is Dr. Klein. If you can hear this, you need to..."
His transmission was cut short. A large bright flash emitted from somewhere in the research facility, casting a bright orange glow that illuminated the surrounding area. A few seconds later, a shockwave hit the little bird, causing it to shake violently. "Holy shit!" the co-pilot exclaimed. "We're good. We're still operational," the pilot reassured us. As we proceeded towards the now burning site, I could see the members of the other security teams that were stationed closer pulling in through the main gate in their MRAPs and transport trucks as the helicopter circled the perimeter. One of the guard towers covering the northern sector of the site was completely engulfed in flames. Red tracer rounds from the machine gun mounted inside were flying in random directions as the ammunition cooked off from the extreme heat.
"Who's shooting?"
A nameless voice called out over the secondary channel that the other security teams used.
"Disregard. It's the tower cooking off." "Roger. We are entering the gate now."
Another joined in as we made another pass. The east side of the building had severe structural damage from what must have been an explosion. The roof and front half of the building were no longer visible. A deep crater filled the place where it used to be. Pieces of burning paper and debris were falling through the air as we made our final approach. In a matter of seconds, the little bird dropped altitude over the rooftop on the northern side of the facility. The pilot hovered the bird right on the deck, allowing us to dismount quickly.
"Alpha team is on deck,"
I called out over the command channel as we secured the LZ. The rotor wash from the little bird covered us in dust and smoke from the raging fire that was beginning to spread through the building. limiting our visibility to near nothingness.
Bird dog is moving to holding pattern. Out.
Our pilot's voice buzzed in my headset as I found the door that served as the roof access point.
This is Bravo team. We are now clearing R&D. Out. This is Charlie. No go on the east side. We'll enter from the ground. Out.
Entering the stairwell quickly, I cleared my sectors. The emergency lighting cast a bright beam of light halfway down the wide spiral staircase, leaving the bottom half drowned in complete darkness. I switched on the light mounted to my rifle and proceeded down the flight of stairs with the team. What the hell caused that explosion? Bauer whispered from the back of the group. Stay on task, I ordered in response, trying to keep the team focused on the mission. It was eerily quiet, despite the situation outside. As we were almost to the ground floor, a woman came bursting through one of the emergency exits. I raised my rifle out of reflex, causing the woman to raise her hands. Don't shoot, please! She began to beg as I moved past her. Ma'am, we're not here to hurt you. Get to the ground floor. I tasked Clay with escorting the woman as we continued on.
We have multiple personnel trying to exit. No sign of the doctor. Moving to third deck.
Bravo's team leader called out over the command channel.
Roger. We have mass casualties on the east side. Starting SR.
Charlie's team leader came next. Roger that. Alpha team is on the ground floor. Starting SR now. I responded as I moved through another open door at the end of the bottom of the stairwell. The door led us into a large reception area. Inside was filled with panicking people that were trying to make sense of what had just happened. Command, this is Alpha 1. We have reached the reception area. We have multiple individuals awaiting transport. Over. I updated Blackburn in hopes of being retasked.
Roger that, Alpha 1. More transport vehicles are en route. Proceed with the mission. Out.
A tall man with a broken nose, wearing a lab coat, came walking towards me. Do you know where Dr. Klein is? I asked, grabbing his arm, stopping him from leaving. He was down in sub-level 2 with me, when... He started coughing as smoke slowly started to fill up the reception area. I need access to the sub-level. I tried to pull him along, but he started to fight back. I'm not going back down there, he screamed, pulling away from me violently. The non-compliant man broke free from my grip and tried to flee. He stopped moving when I leveled my rifle at his chest. Give me your access card. He gave me no verbal response and handed me the card, still clutching his face. Get out of here. I pointed to the main entrance of the building. Command, this is Alpha 1. We're moving to secondary location. Expect communication issues. Over.
Roger that, Alpha 1. Keep us posted. Out.
I rallied the team at the elevator entrances. We're going down there, gents. Keep your hits on a swivel. I ran the access card over a scanner, and the elevator door opened with a ping. Elevator music was still playing as we descended further beneath the facility at a slow pace. Is this the Platters? Bauer commented on the current song playing. Yeah, it is. My parents always used to listen to this shit when I was a kid. Clay chimed in. You do realize we are in an elevator during a structure fire, right? Simmons joined in next. Cut the chatter. Guns up. We're almost there. I pointed to the electronic numbers counting down. Welcome to Sub-Level 1. Have a nice day. A female voice cut over the music, and the doors slowly opened. We exited the elevator, weapons raised. Area secured, Bauer called out as we cleared the small area. Bodies were scattered around, leaving the floors covered in blood. The waiting area opened up to a white hallway. 3 color-coded lines were on the floor and wall. Red was labeled Observation Rooms, blue Testing Labs, green Staff Lounge, Security Offices. The blood from the waiting area stuck to our boots, making a shtick, shtick, shtick sound with each step. We reached the end of the hall as it opened up into a large reception area. It was a cross-section with a circular desk in the middle. Chairs and coffee tables lined the walls, along with more dead bodies. These guys were members of the internal security team. Empty brass casings littered the floor along with various body parts. The only identifiers that gave them away were the white patches with their company logo on it. "Fucking A," Clay whispered as he checked the bodies, inching his finger ever so closer to his trigger. The waiting area had 3 separate hallways, each leading to individual areas that were labeled on the walls. "Let's check out the green route." Dr. Klein was using a radio. He was probably in the security office. Clay suggested. "Sounds good. Let's go. We can clear the rest if he isn't in there." Bauer took point, leading us down the green path. Blood was smeared on the walls and floor, as more empty brass casings trailed off further down the path.
"Attention all staff. Please find the nearest emergency exit."
A robotic voice began to speak over an intercom system.
"There has been a level 4 containment breach. Please find the nearest emergency exit." "Alpha 1, this is Charlie 2. We need..."
The transmission was cut short by a clash of gunfire on their end. "Charlie 2, this is Alpha 1. Relay your last. Over." "Charlie 2, this is Alpha 1. What's your status? Over." I tried again. There was no response.
"Bravo team is moving to assist. Stand by."
I could hear screaming and more gunfire coming from Bravo team leader's transmission.
"All QRF teams, what's your status?"
Blackburn's voice was calm and steady.
"This is Charlie 4. We need immediate evac. Over."
The ground quaked violently, and the transmission stopped. "Command, this is Alpha 1. We are still proceeding with the mission. Over." I tried the radio, but got no response. We found a set of metal doors further down the hall that were torn off their hinges. Outward-facing shrapnel and jagged metal pieces from the doors indicated that the blast came from inside. I noticed a severed hand that was melted to a card scanner on the right side of the wall. As I entered through the mangled doorway, it opened up to a larger hall with a side section. I could still feel the heat from the blast on my neck as I bent down, avoiding a piece of the ceiling that had fallen down. Just as I straightened up, something at the far end of the side section fell on the floor. I raised my rifle and moved towards the noise. A large desk sat turned over, next to an open door that led to what I assumed was one of the security stations. "Dr. Klein, are you here?" I called out loud. There was no response. "Dr. Klein, if you are here, make yourself known. We are here to get you out." I tried again. A badly injured woman came crawling around the overturned table. She began to mumble something under her breath as she got up on her knees. "Doc, get in here. Ma'am, let me see your hands." She raised her hands and sat still. Simmons arrived a split second later. I pointed to the injured woman. "Check her out. See if she knows where our missing man is at." Clay and Bauer entered the other room while I provided security for Simmons. "Claire, what happened to you?" Simmons looked taken aback as he began looking over her wounds, trying to determine the amount of care she would need. It killed them all." She began to cry hysterically. "Listen, I need you to breathe." Simmons tried to calm the woman down. I spotted movement at the other end of the hallway. Clay yelled for me inside the other room just as I was about to check it out. "What's up?" I poked my head inside the doorway. Inside was a mess. A security guard sat sprawled out in a chair with the top half of his head missing. Gray matter and pieces of skull decorated the wall and ceiling behind him. He still gripped a shotgun in his hands. A single spent shell casing sat on the floor next to him. "We found the doc. He's in the holding cell area." Clay pointed at one of the monitors. I don't remember leaving the security section. The next thing I know, I'm halfway down the hall to the observation area.
Jason, fucking hold on."
Bauer's voice was blaring in my headset. I rounded a corner further down the hallway, turning sharp on my heel, catching a glimpse of what I can only describe as a humanoid-looking figure. It was down on its haunches. Bones from its skeletal structure were protruding from its flesh at unnatural angles as it sat twitching and breathing rapidly. "Jason?" Bauer grabbed my shoulder, pulling me to the side. What the fuck was that all about? He shoved me into the wall. I pointed towards the figure, only to see a blood trail leading off into a side room. We need to get the doctor and get the fuck out of here. I shoved past Bauer, continuing down the hall. I did a quick sweep of the room that the figure moved into, only to find more bodies, overturned tables and trash. It looked like a break room of some sort. I noticed that one of the ventilation ducts was torn wide open as I finished my sweep. I decided to push past it and continue down the hall, feeling satisfied with the search. As I moved along, a large reinforced door sat wide open at the end of the hall. Open entryway, I called out to Bauer. Roger, ready when you are. We moved through the door and into a large, square-shaped room. Observation windows and heavy reinforced metal blast doors lined the walls. Clear, Bauer called out from the left side. Clear, I responded from my side. The room was abandoned for the most part.
I have you guys on the camera. The doctor is right outside the room you're in.
Clay updated us. Roger, keep us posted. I walked over to one of the observation windows, keeping my rifle low and at the ready. Inside was a cage and what looked like a dog walking in circles. Bones were sticking out in wicked angles from its severely mangled body. The dog began to bark and snarl while biting at the bars after it spotted us, bending them open enough, allowing it to wiggle through the small open space. It jumped at the window with full force, connecting with a sickening wet thud, smearing blood on the window. It began to spiderweb and crack as the dog continued to slam against it, trying to break out. The fuck is that thing? Bauer asked in awe. I have no fucking idea. Let's move before it gets out. We walked over to the next window to see a man tied down to a metal table, stabbing himself repeatedly in the stomach with the exposed ulna and radius bones of his broken right arm that was free from the restraints holding him down. I've seen my fair share of horrendous things, but this shit made me speechless.
Alpha? What? Stab this. Oh.
I was snapped back to the present by Blackburn's voice. Command, this is Alpha 1. You're coming in broken and unreadable. Over. Again, there was no response. I signaled to Bauer to take point as I followed him to the other entrance. After walking a few meters down the empty hall, I spotted the doctor. Dr. Klein, we're here to rescue you. Please come with me. I waved him over when a sharp pain shot up my leg. In an instant, I was on my stomach, being dragged into a darkened room. I started kicking at whatever was latched onto my leg, trying to grab onto something to stop from being dragged further into the room. I managed to turn onto my side, getting my rifle up and pointed it at the unseen force. I fired off 2 rounds. The muzzle flashes illuminated the dark room, revealing another figure in the same condition as the others, with my leg in its mouth. Fucking shit! I screamed through gritted teeth as it ignored the rounds impacting close to its head. Looking back up, I could see Bauer's outline in the doorway. He hesitated firing in fear of hitting me. Get this fucking thing off of me! I screamed out at him as my head got slammed against something. Fuck! Stop moving! Bauer screamed back. The lights in the room snapped on, and the creature let out a low guttural scream, letting go of my leg. That was my opening. I tried to get up on my feet when I felt a hard tug on the back of my plate carrier. Everything went inverted, and I felt weightless for a brief moment. The creature let out another loud guttural cry. Shit. That was about the only thought that went through my mind as the creature threw me across what looked like another observation room, before things went black. My thoughts were scrambled, and random memories were beginning to play in my mind. They played like a badly edited movie. Scenes skipped and others played out in slow motion. 1 second, I was fishing on the river and drinking beers with the guys, and the next, I was kicking indoors to some mud hut in some war-torn country. Just as I was in the middle of a lovely time with a date in some bar, the woman began to slap me repeatedly while screaming my name, turning a good time into a scene of horror. With each hit, her voice changed, and so did her figure. Jason? Slap. A rifle was in her hands now. "Jason?" She was wearing combat gear and a helmet. "Wake the fuck up!" I blinked rapidly, covering my face in an attempt to ward off any more blows from my attacker. "What? Stop hitting me!" I yelled. Someone was standing over me. I caught a glimpse of a woman who was sitting on the opposite side of me, looking at me with a blank stare. Blood was beginning to seep through a bandage wrapped around her neck. What happened?" I asked, confused, as I looked around. The unknown person helped me to my feet, steadying my stance. "You took a hard hit, man. What day is it?" he asked, shining a light into my right eye, taking off my busted eye protection. Things were still a little blurry as everything began to come into focus. I could barely see out of my left eye. Thursday?" I responded unsure. "Strike one. Alright, where are we?" He wiped something from my face, causing it to sting. A research facility?" I put a hand to my face to find that the left side was completely swollen. I blinked a few more times, looking at the stranger, finally realizing it was Simmons who helped me up. It took me a moment to realize that I was in a break room of some sort. Tables and chairs were strewn out all over the room, and pictures of motivational phrases and scenic pieces lined the walls.
"All QRF units, pull out. All other non-essential personnel are now viable targets. Out."
RCO's voice hurt my head with each syllable spoken. I shook my head, trying to clear my vision as it began to blur again. I felt unbalanced and began to stumble. "Jason, are you good? I need you in the fight, buddy." Simmons grabbed my arm, stopping me from falling. His uniform was torn and bloodied. Combat gauze and an elastic bandage covered his left arm. 2 pink spots stained the bottom of his bandage. He took my shoulder lightly. "Yeah, I'm good," I reassured him. "What happened to your hand?" I asked, fixated on the pink dots. "One of those fucking things bit my fucking fingers off." "Where's Clay and Bauer?" I asked, confused. My feet felt like they had been weighed down with cement blocks. "They're here with Dr. Klein." He pointed over to the other side of the room. Clay and Bauer were doing some basic first aid on Dr. Klein. He had multiple lacerations covering his face and arms. "We need to get to the elevators, boss." Bauer coughed, spitting out a stream of blood on the floor as Simmons gave me another quick look over. "Just hang tight, Bauer. We'll get out of here." The door to the room was barricaded with tables and other random objects, stopping whatever was outside from getting in. I limped over to Bauer and Clay as fiery pain shot up my leg with each step. I squeezed Clay's shoulder and motioned to the door. "There's a fuckload of those things out there. We'll have to move fast," Bauer warned as I took position on the right side of the door. "Frag it?" Clay suggested. "No, I don't want to get trapped down here." Bauer produced a flashbang grenade from his rig. "Flash and crash?" "It would buy us a few seconds at the least." "Sounds good. Let's go." I started clearing the barricade. "Stand by." I began to count down. 3, 2, 1. I pulled the door open slightly, allowing enough room for Bauer to toss the flashbang grenade into the hallway without exposing us too much. I slammed the door shut right after it cleared the frame. A loud, audible thud came from the other side a split second after. We were greeted with the sounds of screaming. I spotted 2 of the creatures off the right side of the entrance, clutching at their eyes after being stunned by the flashbang. I let out a controlled burst of fire, raking their legs and stomachs, causing them to fall. "Covering! Move!" I yelled out loud. "Moving!" Bauer responded, taking point as I covered the rear. We exited to the left and started making our way back towards the reception area. With each fast step came a wave of extreme pain. The guys were moving quick, making it hard for me to keep up with my wounded leg. But I ignored it, moving as fast as I could. "Contact left!" Bauer called out, dropping to one knee, covering our left flank, firing short bursts into a large group that began streaming out of the testing lab area. As we moved down the main hall, leading to the elevators, I dropped down to one knee a few feet away from Bauer, providing cover as he stopped firing and began to maneuver back toward the elevator. I started shooting at the creatures chasing after Bauer when a loud crash came from behind me. I ignored it and focused on the creatures charging after Bauer. Clay, Simmons, and the doctor entered the elevator that was already opened.
"Jason, Bauer, move your asses!"
Simmons yelled over the raging gunfire.
"Run! Fucking run!"
Clay screamed next while holding the door open with one hand, firing with the other. Click. My rifle ran dry as those things closed the gap on us. I noticed some torn medical garments, and others were naked. Blood soaked their hands and feet as they enclosed on us. Just as I was about to reload, Bauer stopped beside me, letting a long burst of fire from his saw, stopping the last group of stragglers in their tracks. They were laying in scattered positions, withering on the ground. One of them landed at our feet, slowly trying to claw at us. I heard a distinct ping from behind me. I glanced back to see the other elevator's doors jammed halfway open. Smoke began to fill the hall at a fast rate as it poured from the elevator shaft.
"Jason, Bauer, are you guys alright?"
Simmons yelled over the radio.
"Simmons, Clay, do you read me?"
I responded quickly, but received no answer. I pressed the mag release on my rifle, letting the empty magazine clatter across the floor. I slammed in a fresh magazine and slapped the bolt release, letting it ride home.
"Clay, Simmons, can you hear me?"
I tried one more time.
"Jason, Jesus, are you guys alright?"
Clay's voice was on the verge of yelling.
"Yeah, we're fine. Are there any fire escapes nearby?"
I asked quickly, not knowing how long the radios would still be working.
"You have to go through the testing labs. There's a fire escape on the southeastern side. You can't miss it."
That was Clay's last response before the transmission dropped.
"Bauer?"
I stepped over the dying creature and started walking back down the hall.
"Yeah, boss,"
he answered, leaning against the wall, breathing heavily.
"We're getting out of here. Come on."
The lights cut out, leaving us in complete darkness. "Knots down," I whispered, flipping down the device, turning it on. The hallway was now basked in a bright green glow. "Moving." I pied the corner leading further into the testing lab area. I spotted two creatures feeding on a dead scientist a few meters to my front. Their eyes glowed through the view of the night vision as I activated my IR laser and hovered it over the first one's head. The 2 rounds from my suppressed rifle hit their mark, sending the creature to the floor, missing chunks of its skull. I quickly transitioned to the other one, who was confused. It started letting out a huffing noise in response. I put 2 rounds in the creature's chest and 1 in its head, leaving it motionless on the floor. Tango down, moving. The testing labs were split up into 3 large sections. "Where the fuck is the fire escape?" Bauer hissed from behind me. "Keep your head on. Look for a sign." I responded, looking around for a glowing sign. Broken glass and random lab equipment were strung out all over the place.
"Hello?"
A voice called out from my right. I snapped towards it with my rifle raised.
"Hello? Is anyone out there?"
It asked again. It was coming from inside one of the labs. The door was open and a dim light was shining outwards. I signaled Bauer to take the right flank as I maneuvered towards the open door. I moved quickly, clearing my sectors as Bauer entered the room from the other side, clearing his. "Clear," Bauer whispered. "Clear," I responded. The lab was empty. A laptop sat opened on a stool. A video was stuck on loop and at full volume.
"Hello? Is anyone there?"
I walked over to the laptop, picking it up and closing it in hopes of shutting it off. It didn't work. I placed it on a lab bench and started clicking around, trying to stop the video. While doing so, a loud crash came from the room across from us. Bauer frantically waved at me to get down and stay quiet. Something sent lab equipment clattering across the floor right beside me as I stopped dead in my tracks at another lab bench. A low guttural screech echoed through the empty halls. Then another one responded right above me, along with several more outside of the room. I looked up to see one of the creatures positioned on the lap bench above me. My heart was beating against my chest like a drum as it inched closer to my head.
Hello? Is anyone there?
The voice from the laptop broke the silence, causing the creature to leap towards it, crashing into all sorts of equipment, sending it to the floor with a thunderous crash. I slowly inched my way over to the doorway that Power was moving out of. I looked over to my left to see 4 more creatures slowly crawling towards us on all fours. As I exited through the doorway, Power signaled me to maneuver down the right side of the hall. I complied, moving slowly and quietly as possible.
Alpha 1.
The words sounded like glass shattering in an empty building. I immediately turned down the volume on my headset in hopes of saving the situation. Several loud screeches came from behind me in response. Fuck. Run! Fucking run! Power bellowed, letting out a burst of fire from his saw. His muzzle flash illuminated the hallway with ghostly shadows with each round fired. Flashes of random objects flew past my vision as I ran full speed down the hall. I stopped after a few meters, turning around to provide covering fire for Power. Power, move! I started firing at the growing group moving towards our position. Moving! Moving! Power yelled back as he ran past me. Move! He shouted a few seconds later. As I maneuvered towards him, I noticed a bright sign with a fire and staircase symbol. Power, exit right. I ran past Power and tested the door. Thankfully, it was unlocked. We managed to get up 5 flights before the creatures managed to get the door open. Their loud chattering filled the empty stairwell. Oh, fuck this shit. Power stopped halfway up the stairs and produced a fragmentation grenade from a pouch on his plate carrier. He removed the electrical tape securing the pin to the body of the grenade and looked over at me briefly. Eat this, you fucking assholes! He pulled the pin and threw the frag down over the railing. Most of the creatures were in bits and pieces. Others were speared by jagged shrapnel from the handrails, pinning them against the wall. The small section of stairwell was destroyed, preventing any of the other creatures from following us. Let's move. I tapped Power's shoulder and took point up the stairs. The lobby was mostly dark, other than the ambient light from outside that gave the inside a dim orange glow. People were going into a frenzy as I exited the fire escape. A man with a fire axe embedded in his skull was laying at my feet, momentarily catching my attention. I was snapped back to reality when a person landed headfirst next to me with a loud crack. I didn't bother looking down. The rest of the team should have been on the roof if they stuck to the plan. An explosion sent me falling to the ground as I entered the roof access hallway. My vision began to blur once again, and my hearing was shot. A high-pitched ringing filled my ears as I got back up to my feet. Power appeared in front of me, pulling me towards him, leading me down the hallway. Just as I began to move, something slammed hard into my side, sending me onto the floor again. I managed to roll over onto my back, seeing a figure at my feet. I kicked out hard, hitting the figure in the chest, causing it to stumble backwards. Quickly drawing the Glock from the holster on my hip, I fired several rounds into its chest, causing it to crumple into a heap on the floor. Power was still fighting with someone as I got back up to my feet. Fuck you! Power screamed as he clutched the person's head between his hands, slamming it against the wall with a sickening thunk. He continued to slam the person's head against the wall repeatedly until I heard a wet, crunching noise. As I grabbed his shoulder, trying to snap him out of it, he instantly turned around and punched me in the face. I should have known better. I limped out onto the rooftop as a Black Hawk helicopter came roaring in low and fast, leveling off at the side of the building, sending dust and smoke everywhere. The rest of the team, along with Dr. Klein, quickly entered the crew compartment. I was halfway to them when the crew chief and the door gunner opened up with their mounted guns. A tracer round zipped past me as I threw myself into the crew compartment. As more of those creatures came pouring out through the doorway, charging towards our bird. As we pulled off, One of them managed to get the upper half of its body in the crew compartment, grabbing the crew chief's leg, pulling him out into the middle of the compartment.
"Fucking get it off!"
he screamed as I stuck the barrel of my rifle into the creature's face and pulled the trigger 2 times, causing the creature's head to explode into a fountain of blood and gore. It fell out, taking the crew chief with it. I got up and manned the door gun, firing on the growing mass on the rooftop. Body parts and chunks of flesh flew everywhere as the large rounds from the 50 cal impacted their targets. They began to fall over the sides without any regards to their own well-being, landing on top of security elements and parked vehicles as we began to circle the building. Some of the men shot themselves in the MRAPs, hoping it would hold the creatures at bay, but they peeled the doors and hatches off like tuna can lids, pulling the poor men out and tearing them apart like they were nothing. We began circling the site in a high orbit as I concentrated my fire on the ones that were still trying to overrun positions that were still holding out. The barrel began to glow orange and smoke fiercely. I signaled that the gun was down and alerted the door gunner, who signaled for the pilot to pull out. I sat in silence as we left the area. I took a seat between Clay and Bauer, resting my rifle on my lap and flipping up my knots, finally letting out a long and ragged breath. Bauer flashed me a smile and patted my helmet. His right canine tooth was missing, and his bottom lip was split. "We fucking made it." He smiled again, before leaning his head back on the cargo netting. Clay grabbed my plate carrier and gave it a hearty tug. He had a busted nose and a large hole in his right cheek. "You're a tough son of a bitch, boss." He gave me a fist bump and looked out over the rocky terrain. I could make out the lights from a town off in the distance as the Black Hawk began to gain altitude. I began to slip into a state of unconsciousness as the loud humming from the rotors drowned out all other noises.
"Jason?"
Simmons shook my shoulders hard, snapping me awake.
"What?"
I blinked a few times, trying to fight off the tiredness. "You have to stay awake, buddy." He slapped me lightly. "I'm good, Doc. Thanks." I gave him a thumbs up.
"You have to turn us around."
Dr. Klein shook me violently, waking me from my dazed state.
"What?"
I asked, confused.
"These are bad people. They are going to torture us for days as soon as we land."
He began to act hysterically and try to charge into the cockpit. The door gunner pulled their service pistol and aimed it at the doctor's head.
"Somebody, get this fucking guy."
Bauer grabbed the doctor and sat him down between his legs. He had his service pistol leveled at the doctor's face now.
"You do that shit again and I will shoot you."
The doctor stopped moving after that.
"Alpha 1, do you read me? What's your status? Over."
Blackburn's voice sounded on edge.
"Command, we're RTB. Over."
I responded quickly.
"Roger. Be advised. When you touch down, comply with all orders given. Over."
I was confused by this statement.
"We'll go out."
The guys were too exhausted to give a shit and just gave me a small acknowledgement of the order. We were greeted by heavily armed men who took our weapons and equipment after the bird touched down at a site I didn't recognize. One of them put a hood over my head and zip-cuffed my hands behind my back. There was a metallic click. A door opened, and I was pushed forward, then forced down onto a metal chair. The hood was ripped off of my head. I squinted at the bright light assaulting my eyes, trying to make out where I was exactly. I sat in silence, staring at my reflection in a two-way mirror. The surprised expression of a bruised and bloodied swollen face was staring back at me. I was exhausted and in severe pain.
"Jason, it says here you've been operating for close to 9 years. Is that correct?"
A female voice asked as 2 people entered the room. "From the Middle East to Afghanistan, Europe and Africa. The list goes on and on. It's quite a resume." I recognized the voice. It was the woman from earlier. She was the one who retasked my team with rescuing Dr. Klein. I sat quietly, waiting for the next question. You and your team managed to capture the target I assigned. Is that correct? She asked, looking up from the file in her hands. Yes, ma'am. I was beginning to feel uneasy. Why did she refer to him as target? I just have a few more questions to ask you. Is that okay? She asked in a calm and collected voice. Did you and your team take, document, or record anything while you were down there? She asked next. My head began to feel funny and my face began to burn. Just recordings for my helmet cam, ma'am. You did something good here. Remember that. She picked up the file and opened the door to the room. Wait, what about my team? She paused for a moment, considering what to say next. They are being interviewed, just as you are. Doctors are coming to check your wounds. Don't do anything you will regret. She exited the room, leaving me alone once more. Over the following days, I went through multiple screenings and medical treatments, ensuring that I was in the clear. I attempted to break out once, and as a result, I received 3 cracked ribs and a deep cut on my cheek that required 6 stitches. To make things even better, they moved me into a small isolation cell that was constantly guarded. As a special fuck you gift, the guards constantly played a variety of songs at a deafening volume. It ranged from the Beach Boys to classical music to nursery rhymes. 3 more days passed before I found myself in another room. This time, there was a video camera mounted to a tripod in the corner. The woman from earlier, who I'll refer to as Cindy, sat across from me with Chuck at her side. Chuck was wearing a suit, but Cindy was wearing civilian clothing. It was off-putting. I've met her type before. They were some of the most terrifying type people when it came to interrogations. You're not a prisoner here, Jason. Quit acting like one. She regarded me with a serious look. Then why are you treating me like one? I shot back, trying to control my temper. You almost killed 4 of my guys attempting to break out of here. How do you expect me to react? Your team members aren't acting like this. Why are you? She had to be playing mind games at this point. I'm sure they are, was my only response as she let out a frustrated sigh. She slid a file over to my side of the table. There are things out there far more dangerous than what you encountered down in those labs. She held my gaze. I'm recruiting people for a task force. Consider this an opportunity to do some real good in this world, Jason. She stood up and walked over to my side of the table, waiting for my response. And if I refuse? I asked, looking up at her. Think about this offer real hard, Jason. Inside that file were declassified reports of recent events. From skinwalkers terrorizing farms in West Texas, to a deadly disease of unknown origin wiping out rural towns in Eastern Europe, and cults trying to bring the end of the world in Mexico. The list went on. When do I start?